Module 11, Part 1. So, this series of lectures, we're going to talk about some strategies, some techniques, some tools, some thoughts to think about when getting organized for the job search and making efficient use of your time. Before you start the job search or the internship search, it's important to remember to keep your notes and materials from this course. One of the assignments for NR387 is to create a folder on your CSU Google Drive called NR387 and download all the lectures and all your homework assignments into that folder. That way, when the time comes for you to start working on finding an internship or a career, you've got all those materials that you need. The NRRT 47 internship guide is something that's updated at least once a year, so you're definitely going to want to read that again to see what's changed, all sorts of policies, procedures, but also how do you get your internship approved, things like that. All the assignments are in there. That document is online through the department's website. It is publicly available. In other words, it's not on a password protected website. It's not in Canvas. So if you can't find it, let me know and I can send you an email where it's at. The textbook for the course, the internships in recreation and leisure services, lots of helpful exercises and information in there. And then also the CSU Career Center's RAM Career Tools has lots and lots and lots of helpful items. As far as planning and organizing, it's important to have at least one, if not several, dedicated job searching spaces. Now, these could also be spaces where you study or you read for other schoolwork, but having your own space where you live, maybe having other spaces, say outside of your house, favorite coffee shop, spot in the library, maybe if the weather's nice, someplace outside, but having those spaces so your brain knows when you're in that space, it's time to work or it's time to study, and then you're making efficient use of your time. As you go through the search process, you're going to be creating lots of electronic files, different versions of your cover letter, your resume, maybe emails, things like that. And so it's important to keep those files organized and backed up so you know where to find them, because you'll find yourself using very similar versions of your resume and cover letter for different jobs you apply for. If you use paper, use file folders and not piles. You might even think about getting a paper or plastic accordion style file organizing system and labeling everything. It just makes life a lot easier. Other tools to have in your toolkit, depending on the types of organizations you want to work for, that may include having a nice business suit of some sort, or at least maybe business casual clothes. So when you go to the interview, you can be dressed appropriately. Having some sort of portfolio. This could just be something that folds open and you can put papers inside, maybe people's business cards, that sort of thing. So that way when you go to an interview, you can bring some extra copies of your resume and share those with people during the interview. Briefcase, probably not necessary. It's not really professional to be carrying a backpack with you. You don't really need to have that amount of stuff for a job interview. Usually just a little portfolio is fine. Having a nice pen, something that's got some weight to it, that always, is a good professional thing to have. If you don't use the schedule or calendar, on your smartphone, then having a paper day planner. Of course, having a good computer, and then a smartphone is something that's really important. And most people have smartphones, and if not, just having your own phone is important as well for communicating. As far as managing, there's this method that different people talk about, and it's the 4 Ds to time management. I've also seen similar techniques for managing emails. So you could think about these different things as tasks that come up or emails that come up, and looking at each one of these tasks and deciding how you're going to handle that. So number one would be drop. So is it something that you don't have to do, right? You can ignore it. Or if it's an email, can you delete it? Number two would be delegate. So this would be, can you forward that email to someone else and have them work on it? Or is it a task that someone else in your life can accomplish for you so you don't have to worry about it? The next one is delay. And a lot of this just has to do with how long it's going to take you. If it's going to take you, if it's an email, it's going to take you more than 2 minutes to respond. Delay it, but make sure you remember to do it later on. So give yourself some sort of reminder, flag it in your inbox, write yourself a little post-it note someplace. If it's a task that needs to be done, make sure you remember to do it. And then the fourth one is due. So if this is an email, if you can respond to that email in less than 2 minutes, go ahead and do it now. Otherwise, if it's a task that needs to get done and it can be done fairly quickly given the other things you need to do that day, I'm going to do that. And what research has shown that for every 1 minute of daily planning you do, so when you start work in the morning or when you start your day, if you spend 1 minute mapping out what you need to get done that day, you'll actually get an additional 3 to 5 minutes that day to get things done. And that's because you're not going from one task, you finish a task and then you sit there for 3 or 4 minutes and think, okay, what's the next task I need to get done? If you map this stuff out, in other words, having a to-do list or having some sort of a schedule for each day, you get some extra time. If you do this for every week, say Sunday evening or Monday morning, and map out what you need to get done each day that week, you actually get 5 to 10 extra minutes over the span of the week. So planning what you need to do, again, putting together a schedule, putting together a to-do list is going to make more efficient use of your time. As far as a timeline for the internship, there is no solid timeline. And this is because we have so many students that do so many different things in so many different locations. We do not require students to start and end their internship within a CSU summer term or fall or spring semester. So what I have put together are some broad guidelines, some generalizations, if you will. So in general, the larger the organization, the longer amount of time it will take them to recruit, screen, interview, and hire employees. So for example, the National Park Service or Vail Resorts, those are large organizations. They will post jobs typically several weeks, if not several months, and sometimes up to 4 or 5 months before they're looking for employees. So for example, I will usually start getting summer job announcements for the large federal land management agencies like the U.S. Forest Service and National Park Service sometimes in November or December. And these are for jobs that aren't starting until maybe May of next year. In general, you should start your internship search at least 6 months out before you want to do your internship. For sure, at a minimum, start 3 months out because there's just lots of places you're going to look, lots of organizations you're going to contact, and then the application and interview process can take several weeks. If you were going abroad for your internship, you need to be planning at least 9 to 12 months out. And a couple reasons for this. Number one, most countries require a student visa. The application process can take several months to get through. Some countries require that you go to their consulate office in the United States for an in-person interview, and so there may be some additional time and expenses with that. Also, depending on the part of the world, the country you want to go to, there may be cultural or language challenges that you have to overcome. Also, certain parts of the world, time is not linear like it is here in the United States. It's more circular, and so things tend to take longer. There's not as much as this sense of urgency that we have in the United States. That being said, it's never too early to contact an organization. If you're not planning on doing your internship for another year or two, it's never too early to reach out to an organization and contact somebody there and just talk to them, right? Introduce yourself, tell them that you're thinking about maybe working for them in the next year or two. They might have you send your resume. Yeah, they might just say, hey, just keep us in mind, or, hey, we'll let you know when our jobs come out. So, it's just a good thing to kind of, get out some contacts there with the organizations you're thinking about. I will point out that if you do not register for the internship course until after registration has closed for a given fall, spring, or summer term, and you are not enrolled in any other courses, the university will assess you a late registration fee. However, the CSU Registrar's Office has a form on their website that you can submit to have that late fee refunded. In the job search process, it's important to keep your communications professional, and so having a professional email address is very important. I really don't see this as being a problem much anymore. I mean, every once in a while, I might see somebody who's got, snowboard dude at something for their email address, but Most students are pretty good these days about just using their CSU RAM's email address and just using their first name dot last name. As we mentioned before, managing your online presence, it's always a good idea before you start searching for a job to Google yourself. See what comes up. And then also check and see what's on your social media feeds. So if someone looks you up either through a Google search or through various social media platforms, what are they going to find out? What sorts of words, what sorts of images, videos, things like that. So, it's pretty much a given that most employers are going to look up job applicants online. Other things in terms of keeping it professional, phone etiquette. So if you answer your phone, it's best to just say, hello, this is Paul, or hi, this is Paul, or you can just say, this is Paul. If you're leaving messages for other people, it's important that you should first state your name, your phone number, a brief message, and then end with your name and phone number again. And this is because if you don't have if you're using your cell phone and you don't have a solid cell phone connection, then the message may come out garbled. So if you start the message with your name and phone number and end it with your name and phone number, hopefully the person can get that information. Now, some people might be thinking, well, what about caller ID? Why do I have to leave my number? Caller ID doesn't always work. And sometimes on landlines, people will have caller ID turned off, so they can't see the caller ID coming in. Also, if you're calling internationally, sometimes caller ID doesn't work. So, it's good to leave your name, number, and then a brief message, and then leave your name and number again. Make sure that your outgoing voicemail message on your phone is appropriate. So, no jokes, no funny stuff, just, hi, you reached Paul Layden. Sorry, I can't take your call right now. Please leave your name, number, and a brief message, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And something like that is pretty straightforward. The other thing, too, is when leaving messages, it's best to try to talk at a normal speed. Don't talk too fast, because sometimes if you talk too fast, it may not pick up everything you say. Make sure that your cell phone does not have a ringback tone. So this is when if someone calls your cell phone, instead of hearing the standard phone ringing noise, they hear a song or music or something like that. That's just not professional, and that could prevent you possibly from getting a job interview. If you are using a landline, notify the people you live with that you are expecting phone calls from prospective employers. Make sure there's a notepad next to the phone, and ask them to answer the phone nicely and take a message. As far as keeping track of what you've sent to who, having a smartphone, a tablet, of course a laptop is really helpful. Microsoft Office is what most of the world uses for email and contact information, and keeping track of schedules and calendars and things like that. So that's a great tool to use. Of course, if you're using paper, having a day planner is great. And then as you're searching for different jobs, it's a good idea to keep track of that in some sort of a spreadsheet, or maybe an Access database, or even just a basic table in Word. Name of the employer, what you sent to them on what date, what they sent back to you, have you had one interview, two interviews, all those sorts of things, so you don't confuse employer A with employer C and send them the wrong thing, or think you're farther along and then you forget to send something in, right? So keeping track of all this stuff is really, really important. You should have multiple backups of your resume. So, put these on a flash drive. CDs and DVDs are kind of going by the wayside, but some people still might have those as a way to back up information. You've got room on the Warner College of Natural Resources network, of course, the hard drive of your own computer. You have your CSU Google Drive account that has lots of storage. And then there's lots and lots of various online storage resources out there. Dropbox is one that's very popular. If you go to this page on Wikipedia, it compares various online storage services and sort of, does it cost money? Is it free? What are the pros? What are the cons? Is it encrypted? All that sort of stuff. So that's a good resource to look and see what's out there as far as online storage. This concludes Module 11, Part 1.